Gammada Nagitimu Sri Lanka.
Nagitimu, api nagitimu. Anguru wala pada atarin hinagi nagitimu Sri Lanka. Iya satu sangha pada atarin nagitimu Sri Lanka. Hitamu idiriya mereka banarama nagitimu Sri Lanka. Heta iti mananabalo kayamu nagitimu Sri Lanka. Nagitimu Sri Lanka. Api nagitimu Sri Lanka. Api nagitimu Sri Lanka. Api nagitimu
Gammada Nagitimu Sri Lanka.
Nagitimu Sri Lanka, that is the common belief of all Sri Lankans at present. Island-wide curfew continues to be in effect, and as always we have all the stories that matter to you lined up to keep you up to date on what's happening here at home and across the globe. Good evening and welcome. This is Primetime News on TV1. I am Jaimal Ratnayaka for the Newsfirst team, where the people come first. Up first are your headlines.
Newsfirst headlines. Main sponsor.
Valuable Finance, best finance company.
Island-wide curfew continues to be in effect. 664 people arrested from within the Western province for breaching curfew. Protests and demonstrations held across the island. Tear gas and water cannons used to disperse Peradeniya University students' protest. Samagi Janabalawega and the JVP take to the streets. Widespread protests held overseas demanding the government to end the current economic crisis.
Newsfirst headlines. Main sponsor.
Valuable Finance, best finance company.
On to your top story for tonight. The Prime Minister's Media Secretary Rohan Balivita has said reports claiming that Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa will resign are untrue and false. In more news, police fired tear gas twice to disperse students from the University of Peradeniya who were engaged in a protest. The protesters demanded to protect the rights of students and to provide a solution to the current crisis in the country.
From the Peradeniya University to the Kandy town today. The protest march was organized by the Students' Union of the university. The police set up barricades at the Galaha junction and informed protesters that they can't proceed under the existing regulations. Police Special Task Force officers had also been called in for security at the location. Staff at the Peradeniya Teaching Hospital also supported the demonstration. Police fired tear gas and dispersed students who broke through the barricades at the Galaha junction. The protesters attempted to march forward for the second time after gathering at the Galahad Junction. Tear gas was fired again at the protesters. Security forces didn't allow protesters to march towards the candy town. However, university students had remained at the Galahad Junction until 3 p.m. Meanwhile, area residents and university students held a protest opposite the Sri Jayawardhanapura University today. The protesters then marched towards the Vijayarama Junction. Tri-Forces personnel and the anti-riot squad were stationed near the Vijayarama Junction to prevent protesters from moving forward. Barricades were also used to stop the protesters. The protesters then continued their demonstration along the road. A group including lecturer Upul Shanta Sannaskala staged another protest at the Vijayarama Junction today.
ඇඳිරි නීතිය කඩාගෙන පාර පැනනට සමා වෙන්න ඒ වෙනුවෙන් දඬුවමක් තියෙනවා නම් අතෙන්ද මෙතෙන්ට අපිට සම්බන්ධව ඒක විඳින්න මම ලෑස්ති. මම එක ඉල්ලීමක් කරනවා. ආයෙත් පාරක් මේ රටේ දරුවෝ මරන්න එපා. ඕගොල්ලෝ මැරෙන්නත් එපා. මේක ගෝඨගේ ප්‍රශ්නයක් නෙවෙයි. ඒ අදින්නේ මහින්දගේ කුණ. ඕගොල්ලෝ රාජ්‍ය හමුදාවක් ආණ්ඩුව වලට වැඩ කරන්න එපා. මේ රටේ කොල්ලෝ කෙල්ලෝ පව්. අපි අන්තවාදීෝ නෙවෙයි මේ රටේ මිනිස්සු. මම වැඩිහිටියෙක්ින්ද කියන්නේ නැවත වතාවක්. පුරවැසියෙක් විදිහට මේ රටේ මිනිස්සුන් බ්ලඩ් බාත් එකකට දාන්න එපා. Thank you මට අහුම්කන් දුන්නට. අපි අප්පුඩියක් ගහනවා ඕගොල්ලෝ. Thank you.
A protest is currently being staged in Nitambua. Another protest was staged in Vattala this evening. A protest is currently underway under the Rajagiriya flyover. Another demonstration was held along Flower Road calling for solutions to the current crises. A protest was held opposite the Shangri-La residencies in Colombo today.
Dissolve the parliament so that we can have a fair and fair election and appoint people who the people want. Enough of the country being run by few for their own friends. We want to run the people for the country for everybody.
A protest march was also held at Havelock Town today. Protests were also held in Kaldana, Valisara and Ragama.
Go home, Gota! Go home, Gota! Go home, Gota! Go home, Gota! Now we lost it.
Hello. Apne venazana bomb suri.
Citizens from many areas engaged in protests today opposing the current administration and the volatile situation in the country at present. Young citizens residing in and around Malabar engaged in demonstrations expressing their dissent over the mounting burdens and oppressive conduct of the government. The protest was held opposite the main bus stand in Malabar. Try to stop us using curfew. We have witnessed curfews previously. Back then, no one stepped out into the streets during curfews. Try to arrest one of us. They don't even know how to impose a curfew. We have no political affiliations. We are the youth of the nation. We don't have electricity or gas. They lie to us about the dearth of dollars and continue to pillage our resources and send them overseas. They can't silence us through curfews. If they try to do that, they will not succeed. This is our country. We won't abandon it. We won't allow them to leave either.
යුද්ධෙ දින්නා කියලා ඒ මිනිසුන්ට මේ විදිහට මිනිසුන්ගේ දේපල හූරගෙන කන්න අයිතියක් නැහැ. ඇත්තටම කවදාවත් අපි හිතුවේ නැහැ අපේ රටට මෙහෙම වෙයි කියලා.
A correspondent reported that security had been tightened in the area while several officers of the police special task force had also arrived at the location at around 2:30 p.m. Residents of Megoda and its vicinity took the streets in protest today, expressing their dissent over the government's conduct and its repressive acts. Then 100 civilians attended the protest, while a heavy police presence was also witnessed in the area.
මේ
This is our cry to end hunger. We have no petrol and no diesel. Ask Gotabaya to go home. That is all. Dissolve parliament and hand over the money that they looted to the treasury. The country is not lost. We are in this situation because they looted our resources. We will plead with you. Please go home. Go back to your village and leave our country alone. Please, Mr. Gotabaya. Let our country be. Another protest was held at the Migora junction along the high-level road, urging the incumbent government to step down immediately. These are people who voted for the SLPP. We can't bear the pressure anymore. We didn't come here to achieve personal motives. We are here to build a peaceful nation. The Rajapaksas must understand that. We want to live peacefully. We can't live with the curfew. Who will feed us? The Rajapaksas won't feed us. If we earn, we eat. But we can't bear it. We can't sit and watch when our children cry. Another demonstration was held in Tudua, Dampe in Piliandala, with protesters calling the government to address the current crisis immediately. Citizens who converged at the Pahala Obada junction in Maddaniya Walasmulla under the Veerakatiya police division engaged in a protest afterwards. Heavy police presence was witnessed in the area where the protest was held for more than 2 hours. A protest was also held at the Peralanda junction. A large group of police officers were also present at the location.
A man held a silent demonstration opposite the Negombo hospital today.
I haven't taken to the streets. I have in fact fallen to the streets. I walked along this street to see whether any shops are open, but none of the shops are. Gotabaya Rajapaksa, Basil Rajapaksa and the rest of the Rajapaksa family are now enjoying a life of luxury in their mansions. The people have fallen onto the streets today. They may leave, but they can't escape this. They will have to return to the US only after returning the wealth that they amassed for generations.
The police then arrived at the location. A silent protest was held opposite a residence in Periyamulla in Negombo.
අපිට passport දෙකක් නැහැ අපිට dual citizen නැහැ අපි මේ රටේ ජීවත් වෙලා ඉපදිලා මේ රටේ මැරෙන මිනිස්සු අපිට රටක් අවශ්‍යයි අපිට නිදහසේ ජීවත් වෙන්න අවශ්‍යයි ඒක තමයි අපි මේ ඉල්ලන්නේ.
A frustrated citizen held a protest near the Periyamulla railway station in Negombo.
මිනිස්සුන් මේ පාරට බහැලා උද්ඝෝෂණය කරන්නේ තෙලට නෙමෙයි විසඳුන් නැති ප්‍රශ්න වලට විදුලිය නැහැ ගෑස් නැහැ බඩු මිල ආසූසට ගිහිල්ලා රැකියා නැහැ මිනිස්සුන්ට ජීවත් වෙන්න විදියක් නැහැ මේ ජනතා පීඩනය හදිසි නීතිය දාලා ඇඳිරි නීතිය දාලා වළක්වන්න බෑ.
One man held a silent demonstration at the Vidyagoda junction in Bandaragama. He said he was attacked when returning back to his residence.
මැරප් කල්ලියක් මට දැඩි ලෙස පහර දුන්නා. මෙන්න ප්‍රජාතන්ත්‍රවාදී සෞභාග්‍ය දැක්මට මට දීලා තියෙන උත්තරය. මේකට නිශ්ශබ්ද විරෝධතාවයකට මැරපෙහරයක් දෙන්න තරම් රටේ තරම් බංකොලොත් බහට පත් වෙලා තියෙනවා.
A tense situation arose near the Independence Square in Colombo. Tensions arose when the Samagi Jana Balawegaya members attempted to march towards the statue of DS Senanayaka at the location. Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa had rejected instructions by the police to call off the protest. The police then took steps to block the protesters near the Nidahas Mawatha. The Tamil National Alliance, Sri Lanka Muslim Congress, All Ceylon Makkal Congress and the Tamil Progressive Alliance joined the protest.
අපිට නිදහසක් තියෙනවා නිදහස් චතුරස්‍රයට යන්න. අපිට යන්න ඕනේ ජාතියේ පියාගේ පිළිරුවලකට. කිසිම හානියක් කරන්නේ නැහැ. කිසිම දේපල හානියක් නැහැ. රාජ්‍ය දේපල හානියක් නැහැ. පුද්ගලික දේපල හානියක් නැහැ. අපි යන්නේ නිදහස් චතුරස්‍රයට. අපි සෙනඟ පිරිවරාගෙන ඉන්නේ. මේ ඉන්නේ පාර්ලිමේන්තු මන්ත්‍රීවරු, මහජන නියෝජිතවරු. මේ ජනතා ඡන්දෙන් පත් වුණා. ඔබතුමාලා ඔක්කොම ඔබතුමාලා යටත් මේ ජන සම්මතවාදේ. අපි ආරක්ෂක අංශවලට විවිධ හමුදාවට පොලිසියට මේ කිසිම කෙනෙකුට අපි තර්ජනය කරන්නේ නැහැ. ඒක හොඳට මතක තියාගන්න. මේ උත්තරීතර ගෞරවය තියෙනවා. හැබැයි ඔබතුමන්ලා කෙරෙහි අපේ තියෙන ගෞරවය කෙලසන්නේ. පාර්ලිමේන්තු මන්ත්‍රීලාගේ ගමන වැළැක්වීම.
Obstructing the activities of parliamentarians is an offence for which you can end up in prison for 5 years. It's a constitutional violation. Rules can be imposed, but one day junior officers like you will have to pay the price for that. The constitution reigns supreme and not Nandasena Gotabaya circular. Although all of us are here, we are worried about whether there is gas and milk powder for children. It is not right to use military and police officers for this. They are wasting the country's resources for the safety of one family and his ministers. The people have been badly affected by this. We don't want to form temporary governments and shuffle positions around by issuing instructions on dividing ministerial portfolios and chairmanships. Many say they will support us to have 113 seats and to govern the country. That won't work out. We came to power with the people's mandate. We are not willing to engage in politics that is filled with deals. The SLPP caused the country's downfall. It was the president nominated by the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna and the SLPP government that won the 2020 election, which caused the country's downfall. Remember that we will always stand against terrorism. I wish to say that we will visit the Independence Square again with hundreds of thousands of people. We are ashamed of this government that has a president who believes a soothsayer in Anuradhapura. The country is facing this situation because they sought the advice of Nyanaka. Those in the Rajapaksa family have not been able to stand with the people. They are unable to walk on these roads. If they do that, they will be booed by the people. They have enacted these laws to protect their family. They have imposed emergency laws and restricted the people from expressing their emotions. They are taking steps to suppress the people's voice without respecting the people's demands. The Tamil-speaking people must unite and support the Samagi Jana Balawegaya and send this government home. We have joined hands with the Samagi Jana Balawegaya on behalf of the Tamil National Alliance. We have come here to raise our voice against this government. The people should be protected under the Public Security Ordinance, but the government is issuing this law against the people. That is unlawful. That is why we joined the main opposition party against this curfew.
Permanent barricades had been set up to prevent the protest of the Samagi Jana Balawegaya today.
The Jatika Jana Balavegya, led by the Janata Vimukti Peramuna, also organised a protest in Maharagama this afternoon.
The people were to take to the streets today, urging President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to resign and to hand over this responsibility to someone capable. There is no solution to the problems of the people. This is a struggle of the people. They have imposed the curfew to suppress public dissent. They can't continue like this. We will take to the streets when they lift the curfew on Monday. We will enter the streets immediately once it's lifted. Gotabaya Rajapaksa must leave the country as early as possible.
They can't stop the voice of the people through suppression. We stand with the people. We reflect the people's sentiments. The government can't use any law to stop that. That is the message that we wanted to convey through this.
President Gotabaya Rajapaksa doesn't hold the mandate or the ethical right to remain in power. If the government is planning on remaining in power by imposing curfews, controlling social media and burdening the people, not just the people in Sri Lanka, but Sri Lankans overseas will also take to the streets by protesting opposite diplomatic missions. The government came to power promising to establish national security, but today they are focusing on their personal security. Security has been tightened at the Carlton House and Myanaka's house in Anuradhapura. By blocking social media platforms like Facebook and WhatsApp, if Gotabaya Rajapaksa is assuming that he can silence the people, then that's a joke. Public opposition will continue to mount. The people will continue to fight until the government that burdens the people is chased away. The people will not only carry out their protest, but also form a people-centric government. For the first time in world history, a government has imposed a curfew as they can't face the opposition by the people. We wish to tell Gotabaya that they can't stop this through protests.
Meanwhile, a protest organized by the Youth for Change organization and residents of Maharagama was staged at the Pamanua junction this morning. Security in the area was beefed up during the protest. Our cell phones have been blocked. Facebook has been blocked. Are we supposed to just stand by? Are we expected to starve on our beds? Is Gotabaya Rajapaksa going to bring the money of Nirupama Rajapaksa mentioned in the Pandora papers and distribute it among the people? I teach economics at an international school. I am ashamed to say that my students are asking me if the governor of the central bank does not know economics. What am I to teach my students? Can I teach my students with a straight face when he says that inflation does not increase when you print more money? How can we agree with such statements? Please understand that this is not something done based on party politics. A senior police officer who visited the site of the protest requested the protesters to move off the main road and stage their protest. The protesters adhered to the directions of the police officer. Employees of the Nikavaratia hospital staged a silent protest demanding for solutions to the crises in the country.
The ordinary people and the employees of this hospital
Namal Karunaratne also attended the protest in a show of support. Our correspondent reported that the police had seized Namal Karunaratne's vehicle and arrested his driver during the demonstration. A senior police officer told Newsfirst that the driver and the vehicle were seized
as they were not in possession of a valid permit to travel during curfew. 3 of our comrades have been arrested by the Variapola police. If the government can pressurize the people, don't the people have a right to voice their concerns? We are not willing to accept this curfew. They loot millions and waste them. They are inconveniencing the public and pressurizing them. If the government feels that they can suppress the people when they rise up against them, then those are only dreams.
As you witnessed earlier on in the bulletin, island-wide protests that commenced earlier today have carried on into the night, and News First is in fact receiving footage of the protest staged by the people. This following footage is from a suburb in Colombo. Widespread dissent over the current administration has also spilled over to foreign nations, where Sri Lankans residing overseas have taken to the streets to voice their objections.
Sri Lankans living overseas have organized protests against the economic crisis in Sri Lanka. They held demonstrations demanding the Sri Lankan government to create a conducive environment for the people. Protests were organized in Australia's capital of Melbourne this morning. Sri Lankans in Brisbane also held a demonstration.
A group of Sri Lankans living in Brisbane, Australia have gathered here in solidarity with Sri Lankans who are undergoing severe economic hardships at the moment. Their message to the government is very clear. They have gathered here since early evening holding boards and placards, and there are more demonstrations organised over the week here in Brisbane. I'm Masha Nicole reporting for Newsfirst from Brisbane, Australia.
Another protest was held in Sydney. Some Sri Lankans organised a protest in New Zealand's most populous city of Auckland as well.
We have to get rid of this corruption for the Sri Lankan to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
And go home, Rajapaksa family, go home!
Another protest was organised by Sri Lankans in the US state of California.
They are trying to silence the people's voices in Sri Lanka, but they can't silence our voices. That's what we are here for.
Protests were organised in UK's city of Liverpool today as well. Protests were also organised in UK's cities of Newcastle and London. Sri Lankans in Japan expressed their concern over the situation during an event to mark the Sinhala and Tamil New Year. A protest was organised by Sri Lankans living in the French capital of Paris. Sri Lankan expatriates in Italy also held a demonstration today. A demonstration was also held in Finland.
Island-wide curfew, which is in effect, will remain until 6 a.m. tomorrow. Police said that 664 people have been arrested for violating curfew by 6 a.m. today. The suspects had been arrested during operations carried out in the Western Province. Our cameras also captured the situation in many parts of the island today.
හැබැයි සාධාරණයක් තියෙන්න ඕනේ. මිනිස්සුන්ට රස්සාවක් කරගන්න ජීවත් වෙන්න දෙන්නකෝ. මොකද්ද මෙච්චර අසාධාරණ? අපි මේ ඒකාතරණ මගඩි වැඩවලට අපිව අල්ලගෙන අපිව කණ්ඩායම්. මේ මොඩ කතා නෑ මාත්‍ය මොඩ කතා යන්න මගෙත් කොහොම කියලා වැඩක් නෑ. මාත්‍ය සාධාරණයක් තියෙන්නේ. හරිද? ඒක අපේ ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන එකත්. නමුත් සාධාරණයක් ඉල්ලන්නේ.
Farmers who brought their produce to the Katugastore Economic Centre were unable to sell them during curfew.
අපි මේ ඉලවලු ඊයේ ඉඳලා කඩලා මේ ලැහැත්ති කරගත්තේ ඒ අතරමඟ තමයි මේ කැපියු දාලා කියලා පොඩි ආරංචියක් ආවා.
අද එළවලු ගෙනාවට පස්සේ බඩු ගන්න වෙලොන්දු නැහැ විකුණ ගන්න ක්‍රමයක් නැහැ. කිලෝ ලක්ෂ 2ක් විතර එළවලු අද හිට අපතේ දාන්න තමයි වෙන්නේ. ඉතින් මේවා රාජපක්ෂ පවුල රැකෙන්න කරන ඇදිරිවිදිය තමයි මේවා. නැත්නම් ජනතාව ආරක්ෂාව වෙන්න නෙවෙයිනේ.
ගොවීන් එළවලු රැගෙන කැප්පෙටිපොළ ආර්ථික මධ්‍යස්ථානයේ පැමිණ තිබුණා.
Produce brought by farmers. The cost of vegetables had risen as a result. A sack of fertilizer costs 17,000 rupees. Tomatoes cost 30 rupees. We can't sell it at this rate. The cost of beans ranges from 80 to 100 rupees, while cabbage costs around 35 to 40. Carrot is sold at around 130 or 120. Leeks cost around 60 to 65. People who travelled out of Colombo have been stranded in other areas as a result of curfew that came into effect after a sudden announcement last night. An elderly couple had spent their night at a bus stand in Karandenia. They were unable to catch a bus to travel from Balapitia to Gaul. People are extremely helpless. We won't have a job if this continues. We are facing many injustices due to the curfew.
The restriction on social media access that came into effect this morning was lifted at 3:30 this evening. Secretary to the Ministry of Technology, Dr. Jayanta De Silva, said that access to social media in the country was restricted upon a request made by the Ministry of Defence. Responding to the blanket restriction on access to social media, the Human Rights Commission of Sri Lanka said the restrictions cannot be accepted under any circumstance. Chairman of the Commission, retired Supreme Court Judge Rohini Mal Singh has said the blanket ban on social media sites cannot be condoned. She stressed that at a time when the people are suffering due to a shortage of power, fuel and food, they have no right to peacefully express their views. The Bar Association of Sri Lanka also issued a statement calling for the social media ban to be lifted immediately. The BASL pointed out that the blanket restriction of access to social media affects the people's right to expression. Meanwhile, the chairman of the Information and Communication Technology Agency, Oshada Senanayake, has resigned. In a tweet, he said that he officially tendered his resignation last week. He wrote, and I quote, "I'm sorry I could not do more, but circumstances are such, and as I always said, I would vehemently stand by my principles and ethos I believe in," unquote. Previously, Oshada Senanayake had also resigned from his post as Director General of the Telecommunications Regulatory Commission.
News First, with the people.
In news from overseas, Pakistan's President Arif Alvi has dissolved Parliament following an attempt to remove Prime Minister Imran Khan from office.
Pakistan's parliament has been dissolved after the deputy speaker refused to hold a vote of no confidence against Prime Minister Imran Khan. Pakistani Minister Zartaj Gul Wazir had tweeted that general elections would be held within the next 90 days. A no confidence motion had been brought against the Pakistani Prime Minister for the economic crisis that has affected their country. But the no confidence vote was dismissed by Deputy Speaker Qasim Suri, who termed it against the constitution today.
And with that, it's a wrap of primetime news on TV1. For the News First team, I'm Jaimal Ratnayaka, alongside our sign language interpreter for tonight, Taraka Gabriel. Just a kind reminder to take care, stay safe and